Good morning. Let's get started with our study for today. And I want to take you to two verses before we go to Daniel. And the first one is found in Hosea chapter 9. And I'm going to read there verse 8. The prophet is the watchman over the people of my God. It's interesting that God always places a watchman, a person who is there to guide and give instruction to his people. And then I want to read Amos 3 verse 7. Verse 7 says, "Surely the sovereign Lord does nothing without revealing his plans to the servants, the prophets." We see quite clearly here that when God is going to do something, he always allows people an advantage to know what he's going to do before he does it. And he reveals this information through his servants, the prophets. Now here I want you to pick up that we have moved, as I said to you, from the present tense in the book of Daniel to the future tense. We've moved from the physical or the literal events, and we are now moving forward to the symbolical events of the future. And as I also indicated to you, in order to understand the symbols, we need to also look at the literal explanations given. In them we find hidden the keys that unlock the mysteries of the symbols. I also want to make it very clear to you here that in the book of Daniel, Daniel chapter 2 was a vision that was given to Nebuchadnezzar. In Daniel chapter 7, the vision is given to Daniel. And as I said to you yesterday, the vision in Daniel 2 had to be given back to Nebuchadnezzar because he had forgotten it, and then the explanation was given it. And it was possible, if somebody wanted to add to the vision or to take away from it. But here I want you to notice in Daniel chapter 7, and I want to take you right there, and I want you to see that when we read this, it is very clear, as it says there. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream, and visions passed through his mind as he was lying on the bed. And then it says this, he wrote down the substance of his dream. That means there was no possibility for anybody to try and add to or take away from what Daniel actually had seen. Daniel records this accurately. There is no chance of coloring in more than what was actually given. And then I want you to notice something else. And that is that because this vision was given by God, we need to take it seriously. Now I would like to go a little bit further today. And I want to read verse 2 and up to verse 4. Daniel said, "In my vision at night, I looked, and there before me were the four winds of heaven churning up the great sea. Four great beasts, each different from the other, came up out of the sea. The first was like a lion, and it had the wings of an eagle. I watched until its wings were torn off, and it was lifted from the ground, so that it stood on 2 feet like a man, and the heart of a man was given to it." Very important information here. First of all, I want you to note that the vision, as I mentioned to you, is not just about a particular place anymore, but has become universal. We see this by the words that there was four winds of heaven churning up the great sea. Here we see quite clearly that the four corners of the earth, that means the whole earth, is now taken into this vision. Then I also want you to notice that four great beasts, each different from the other, came up out of the sea. Now, in symbolical language, seas always represent people, lots of people, nations, for example. And we find that out of people, out of these nations, we are going to find four particular kingdoms rising. We're going to see that these are kingdoms later on. But I want you to notice right here also that when we talk about animals, especially creatures, in Jewish thinking, they always symbolize opposition, always symbolize evil and not good. The attack on good by evil. And then I want you to notice something else, that the first beast we see is that of a lion. It had the wings of an eagle. That means it had the strength of a lion, as we find in Proverbs 30. It was the king of lions. It was the king of creatures, sorry. And the wings, which symbolized that of an eagle, meant that it was effective and fast in what it did. But then it says, I watched until the wings were torn off. And it was lifted from the ground so that it stood on its 2 feet like a man. Here we find again symbolical language is given to this beast, that this beast which was evil actually becomes converted and receives the heart of a man. It is lifted up. And we pick up something quite interesting here if we look at the book of, or the chapter 2, where Nebuchadnezzar rises up from the dust after being a beast, and to him is given reasoning, the heart of a man. So we see here quite clearly that this first beast symbolizes Babylon. It's interesting if you look at the archaeology findings that we find for Babylon. Babylon always had pictures of lions with wings on them. And then I want you to notice here that because a heart is given to it, it means it is now something that God can actually work with. Prior to this, God couldn't work with it. But now that a heart has been given to it, it is now an instrument in his hand to his glory. And we see all of this actually having taken place in Daniel chapter 4, where Nebuchadnezzar, after being an animal, a beast, rises up, looks towards God, and acknowledges God as the king of the universe. Very interesting. So the first beast here, the lion beast with wings, symbolizes the king of Babylon, who was the great king, the king of kings, as we record here, of the nations, and the king of beasts. As we study this more, I want you to know we're moving on. And we're going to realize again that God is sovereign and works with the hearts of man.